Tell No Tales. This is episode 3 of Netflix's One Piece adaptation. And this is the episode where we get introduced to Usopp. So we're going to be completely skipping the Island of Rare Animals, apparently, because that was supposed to be the next arc, or the next story anyways. But yeah, the adaptation, just skipping that and jumping straight into the Syrup Village arc, which is fine. I don't really mind that at all. I didn't really care too much for the Island of Rare Animals storyline anyways, and it doesn't really add anything. There's no like big characters that really get introduced that I could recall. Not to mention that it would just be like a waste of a budget, because you would have to like CGI all the animals or do practical effects, and that would just be too much money for a storyline that didn't really do much. So yeah, let's just jump right into this. So we start off with a montage flashback of Usopp when he was a kid, and he's just running around ringing the village bell and yelling that pirates are coming. And of course everybody is freaking out and stuff, but with every montage that we see of him doing this, people start ignoring him more and more and more until people just outright ignore him altogether, because Usopp is basically the boy who cried wolf. And later on in the episode we find out why he's doing it. Basically his mom is sick. His dad is a pirate. In fact, his dad's actually a pirate that works under Shanks. And he believes that, you know, his dad's going to come back home one day, and when he does, his mom will be cured. And of course, his mom doesn't get cured, she dies. So, yeah, that sucks. But that's basically Usopp's little backstory. And we immediately jump to our gang where Luffy has just finished making the Jolly Roger for the crew. It's the straw hat. So I don't know if it's just me, but there was one part in this scene that just really, I don't want to say bugged me, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's the fact that Luffy has like these like white flakes on his face. It took me a while to figure out what the hell it was. I think it's supposed to be like paint that he had from drawing the Jolly Roger, but it just, I couldn't stop staring at it. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's just there. No one brings it to attention. We don't really see that it's because of the paint. I'm just assuming it is. But he has like these weird markings on his face, and I just couldn't stop staring at it. And I don't know. I think I just get it from my family because, what movie was it? I think it was Blood Diamond. My dad, like as soon as he saw Jennifer Connelly's character, like he couldn't stop staring at her eyebrows. He was like, her eyebrows are too bushy. She needs to trim them. And then from then on, like I couldn't focus on the movie because every time I saw her, I just kept staring at her eyebrows. And that's kind of what this is like for me here. This whole entire scene, I kept staring at Luffy's face. I'm just like, what the hell is that? Wipe your face, dude, please. And we just get like a kind of funny moment where Zoro comes out and he's telling Nami that her bathroom is busted. And Nami's like, we don't have a bathroom. So I was like, oh, well, something's leaking. And I thought we were going to have like a little funny moment where he's like, oh, and you probably don't want to go back in there then. Or just something like that. But no, it turns out that the ship is leaking. And of course, Nami is like freaking out because she goes to see if the Denden Mushi that she was using to make contact in the last episode still works, and it doesn't. And yeah, they realize, okay, well, we got to get to Gecko Islands before this ship sinks. Fortunately for us, Gecko Islands has a shipyard. So let's go for that. And then meanwhile, we get like a storyline with Garp and Kobe and Helmelpo. And that storyline is basically Helmelpo is the one that's kind of in charge of all the cadets, but he's terrible at it. And Garp seems to notice that Kobe is actually the better cadet. And he invites Kobe in, and we just get like a moment where the two of them are playing some kind of game. I don't know exactly what it is they're playing. I think it might actually be, is it Go? Soji and Go? What's the name that... It's the game that Shikamaru plays all the time in Naruto. I think that's the game it is. Anyways, Kobe loses, and that's when Garp tells him that the reason why you lost is because you're too busy focusing on not losing, that you're always on the defense. You got to be more aggressive. And so he actually sets up a timer. He's like, all right, 2 minutes. So you just got to play. You can't even think about what your moves are going to be, just play. And so Kobe plays and he beats him. the more they play, the more Kobe keeps beating Garp. And that's when Helmeppo shows up and says, hey, there was a sinking ship, but we covered this, and it's the Jolly Roger that Luffy made. And Kobe tells him, like, the nearest island is Gecko Islands. So Garp makes plans to head there so that they can capture Luffy. And then he ends up making Kobe the senior cadet. And so Helmeppo gets demoted. So I'm pretty sure that's going to cause some friction between the two. And then we also get a little subplot with Buggy, which I was kind of happy about, because I mentioned in the last video, but Buggy completely stole the show for me with episode 2. Like, he stole that episode. He was awesome. The actor who played it just, like, really freaking nailed that role. And so, of course, I'm glad to see more Buggy. And we get introduced to Arlong. I will say the design for Arlong is pretty interesting. I like how they're not trying to make the characters, like, they're trying to be as faithful as they can, but obviously you can't be too faithful, because anyone who's read the manga, you'll notice that the characters are kind of deformed. By that I mean they're not they don't have realistic proportions. That's actually one of, like, the big traits of One Piece, is that everyone's very, like, kind of cartoony and over the top in terms of their design. They're not characters with realistic body proportions and stuff. So translating that into a live action would be kind of hard, but they try to do as much as they can. And yeah, I actually don't mind the look of Arlong in this. But Arlong is pretty much mad at Buggy about the fact that Buggy, he tells Buggy, like, you know, I'm in control of the East Blue, and you've been doing some stuff without paying tribute, in a sense. And then he tells Arlong, hey, there's this other big shot climbing up the ranks. His name is Luffy. He has a straw hat. He attacked this military base, and he stole a map to the Grand Line. How about I help you track him down? Like, I have eyes and ears everywhere. I can find him for you. And so there's going to be a partnership made there. But yeah, back with Luffy in the game, they arrive at Syrup Village, where they are at the shipyard. And yeah, we get a moment where Zoro sees, like, Buggy's wanted poster, and he's upset that Buggy has such a big bounty on him and he didn't collect it. He's like, man, we should have just locked his head into a crate, and then we could have just taken that in. And Luffy points out that, well, you're wanted too, so who exactly are you going to go to turn in the bounty? And he's like, oh yeah, I guess that's right. As they're walking around, Luffy is trying to think about, like, what kind of ship do they want, because it can't just be any ship. It has to be, like, the perfect ship. And Nami's like, all right, but we're going to have to steal this thing, so it can't be anything big or grand. It has to be something smaller that we can steal pretty easily, because the bigger the ship, the harder it's going to be for us to steal it. Not to mention the fact that it's only the 3 of us, so we can't really be the crew of a giant ship. And then Luffy's like, wait a second, like, who said anything about stealing? We're not going to be stealing any ships. And Nami's like, well, how exactly are we going to get a ship? We don't really have any money. And yeah, Luffy seems to believe that he can just talk to one of the people and they'll hand him over a ship. And Nami's like, all right, well, I don't think that's going to work. And she, like, walks off, and Zoro kind of follows after her. And he's like, all right, so what's the plan? And then Nami's like, we're going to have to steal a ship. He's like, all right. And Luffy's walking around, and that's when he sees the Going Merry, the first ship that Luffy gets in the manga. And we didn't really get to see too much of it here. We just get to see the figurehead. But yeah, kind of interested to see how the whole entire ship looks. But yeah, Luffy immediately falls in love with this thing. And as he's, like, staring at it, Usopp shows up. And it turns out that Usopp was cleaning out the barnacles and the bird crap that's on the ship. That's basically his job. His job is that he works at the shipyard cleaning out all the barnacles and bird crap that accumulates on the ship. And he Luffy tells him, obviously, like, hey, like, I want to buy this ship. And Usopp's like, well, I can't sell it to you because that's not my job, but I know who owns the shipyard. Like, I'm friends with her, so I can take you to her and maybe you can make a deal with her. And so Luffy and his crew go to a giant mansion where we see Kaya. And Kaya is the daughter of a well-off family who owns the mansion. The parents are dead. They were killed at sea. And so it's just Kaya now and her butler and 2 servants. And of course, Kaya is happy to see Usopp, the butler, and the two servants aren't. The butler is. They give him an actual name. I can't pronounce it for the life of me, but so I'm just gonna call him by his real name that we find out later in the episode, which is Kuro. And then of course we have Sham and Bucci, and Sham got gender swapped. But to be honest, the gender swap didn't really bother me too much because Sham is a minor character. And I actually think that the gender swap works here just because the play between Sham and Bucci, in my opinion, just works better with Sham as a female. So, yeah, the gender swap there didn't really bother me all that much. And basically, Kaya wants to invite Usopp for her 18th birthday, and Kuro's like, no, like, we don't have enough meals and stuff for everybody. Like, this is such short notice, but Kaya insists. And so Kuro tells Sham and Bucci to show the Straw Hat Gang to where they can get some new outfits and take a shower and all that stuff and clean up, basically. And so we just have like a scene where Nami is like trying out different clothes while Luffy is just chatting away. Zoro shows up and he's like, I'm just gonna wear something black. And yeah, we just get like a moment where every time Nami tries out an outfit, she asks Luffy like, how does this look? And he just like, you look like Nami. Basically showing that there's no hints of any romantic relationships here. And I was like, all right, good. Because there is none in the manga, at least not in the beginning. To be honest, I'm not caught up on the manga. Like I said, I've only read the first few, like the first 100 or so chapters. But Luffy seems to be kind of like, let's just say like women aren't really on his mind. Like he's not really into the whole like relationship thing. He's just too focused on becoming the king of pirates and finding the One Piece. And yeah, I read that. I think it was it Oda basically put his foot down and was like, there's not going to be any real romance in this series. And I was like, all right, good. Because that's the last thing I want. The last thing I want is Netflix shoving in their romance. To be honest, if it was up to Netflix, it'd probably make Nami gay or something. Or maybe like turn Luffy like asexual or whatever. Because that's how modern day series and movies and stuff are now. Everyone has to fit some kind of checkbox. But yeah, so basically, Luffy doesn't see Nami in that way. Nami's just upset. Not that Luffy doesn't see her that way, but that Luffy's not showering her with praise or basically saying anything helpful. He's just like, you just look the same to me. And she's like, okay, whatever. We do have one moment where she dresses up in black. And then she's like, so what do you think? And Luffy once again is like, you still look like Nami to me. And Zoro's like, I'm the one in black. And I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. That's Zoro. He doesn't care what he wears as long as if it's black. And he refuses to allow anyone else to wear black because he's going to be wearing black. He's the only one that can wear black for the dinner. So yeah, then we get the actual dinner itself. And once again, like, so throughout this whole thing, we have Usopp. He's like sharing these grand stories with Kaya about how he's like this great adventurer and he fights sea dragons and things like that. Basically, it's over the top stories. They're all BS, but Kaya seems to enjoy them. And yeah, she's sick. We notice she coughs a lot. She's not very well, and the only thing that seems to help her is like this weird blue tea. And during the dinner, before the food's brought out, we noticed that Sham and Bucci are making this kind of poisonous soup. Because we even have a funny moment where Bucci is like, after he finishes, he's about to take a sip, and Sham has to slap him and tell him like, hey, are you trying to poison yourself? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. It's just like, this is usually what chefs do. So we pretty much get the hint that Kuro, Sham, and Bucci are trying to kill off Kaya by poisoning her. And so they make her a special soup. And before she can like eat it, Luffy introduces himself, reveals that he's a pirate to the surprise of everybody, including Usopp, and says that, he wants to become the king of pirates, go to the Grand Line, find the One Piece, and that he needs a ship. And there was a ship that he saw in the shipyard, and he really wants it, and he's going to take care of it and stuff. He's walking on the table as he's talking. And Kuro gets upset and basically calls the dinner off and tells everyone to leave to go back to their bedrooms and stuff. Well, actually, he tries to get rid of Usopp and Luffy and the crew, but Kaya's like, it's already too late. Like, they can stay the night and they can leave, tomorrow. And so he's like, all right, whatever, fine. We also see that Mary is there. And Mary is a lawyer, which is different than in the manga. I believe in the manga, Mary is just another butler. But here he's actually a lawyer. He's trying to talk to Kaya about transferring over ownership of the shipyard to Kaya. Because basically when she turns 18, she's supposed to claim ownership of the shipyard. And she turns 18 at midnight. But later on, when we see Kuro talking to Mary, Mary is kind of confused about the fact that Kuro is going to be the one taking ownership. That the papers aren't going to Kaya, but instead they're going to be going to Kuro. And Kuro tries to brush this off as, Kaya is not feeling well. She wants me to handle everything until she's feeling better. But Mary's like, that seems very suspicious. Like, I want to at least talk to Kaya first to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And that's when Kuro reveals that he's evil. If you hadn't have guessed it before, I mean, he already kind of looks like one of those smarmy villains. But, Kuro has very quick speed. He's basically like the Flash. And also he has these claw-like blades that come out of his fingers. Basically later on we find out he's captain of the Black Cat pirates. So his hand actually kind of looks like a cat's hand. And then rather than like cat nails, it's basically like blades, knife blades. But he kills Mary. And then later that night, Luffy and Zoro are just walking around the mansion. Luffy's looking for food. Zoro's looking for something to drink. And then they eventually come across Usopp in the kitchen. And Usopp talks about Kaya and stuff. Meanwhile, Nami is sneaking around the mansion stealing stuff. And she's like stuffing them into a pillowcase when she hears noises, like footsteps approaching. And so she hides out in this room that turns out to be Kaya's bedroom. And Kaya notices Nami, notices the pillow, realizes that she's stealing from her. And rather than being like upset about it or anything, the two of them have a chat. And a friendship kind of develops. And Kaya just explains about how Usopp lost his mom when he was young. And Kaya's parents felt bad for him, so they gave him a job at the shipyard. And since then, him and Kaya have been friends. And the only time when she feels happy is when Usopp is sharing his adventure stories with her. And throughout this whole thing, Nami starts to kind of feel bad for Kaya. And when they leave, we have this moment where Nami starts taking out the items from the pillowcase and putting them back where they were. So this is like the first time where Nami is like realizing that, okay, maybe I was wrong about rich people and stuff like that. And she decides not to steal from Kaya. So we get a little bit of character growth there, which I liked. Meanwhile, with Usopp, Zoro, and Luffy, Usopp reveals that his father was a pirate who left when he was just a baby. And he reveals who his dad was. His dad was Usopp. And Luffy's like, hey, I know who that is. He's part of Shanks' crew. He's part of the Red Hair Pirates. I used to see him all the time. We would hang out together. And Usopp is like, oh, that's cool. But you can tell that he's like bothered by the fact that he never got to spend any time with his dad. Meanwhile, Luffy was able to spend like all this time hanging out with his dad. So yeah, that kind of sucks for Usopp. But eventually, Usopp reveals like, yeah, there's no like drinks in here, but there's a wine cellar, so I can go show you it. And so I was like, all right, let's do that. And so Usopp and Zoro leave, and Luffy decides to stay behind. He sees the pot of poisoned soup, and he just chugs the whole thing down. And then in the cellar, Zoro is like looking around for, wine bottles and stuff, and Usopp ends up tripping over a body, and he trips over the body of Mary. And Zoro like notices like the 5 stab wounds on him. And since he's seen Kuro from the very beginning, he's always like, this guy seems very familiar. Like I could have sworn I've seen this guy before. And he even confronted Kuro earlier, but Kuro's like, no, I have no idea who you are. Like, I don't think we've ever met each other. And after he sees the stab wounds and then he sees Kuro, he's like, I know who you are now. Yo, Kuro, you're the captain of the Black Cat Pirates. You were supposedly killed by Morgan. How did you survive? And we're never given an explanation how. I think it's explained in the manga. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's like another character that's part of the Black Cat gang in the manga that's not here, and that's Django. And Django is supposed to be like Kuro's like first mate. He's like the second in command. And I believe Django is the one that helps trick Axe Hand Morgan into believing that Kuro's dead. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But Django's not in this series, apparently. At least he's on this episode. So I don't know how Kuro was able to trick Morgan. But yeah, basically Kuro somehow tricked Morgan, and Morgan, took credit for killing Kuro, even though he actually did survive. And yeah, he basically faked his death, created this new identity, and he's come across Kaya, and he's taken the role as her confidant and head butler so that he can trick her into transferring ownership of the shipyard to him. Then he's going to kill her off, and now he's going to be rich from the money that the shipyard will make. But we get, I don't even want to say a fight scene because it's super brief. Basically, Zoro takes out his sword. He tries to attack Kuro, but Kuro uses his speed to like dodge around it. And then as Zoro is too busy focused on Kuro, Sham comes up behind Zoro and hits him in the back of the head with a bottle and knocks him out. Sham and Bucci turn to Usopp, but Usopp is able to make his escape. And so Kuro's like, all right, take the body of Zoro and Mary and dump it in the well. And so they do. They drag the bodies out, dump it inside a well. Meanwhile, Usopp runs into the village where he's screaming that pirates are, the pirates are here, and banging on the doors, but no one believes him. In fact, one person tells him to shut up and to stop bothering them. And Usopp starts crying because he's like, there's pirates. They've taken over the mansion. My best friend's in danger, and no one believes me. And then that's when he looks up, and Kobe is there. Kobe's like, I believe you. So the Marines have arrived on the island, which means we're probably going to get a showdown between the Marines and Luffy in the next episode. I will say that it is kind of weird that Usopp decides the first thing he's going to do is he's going to run out of the mansion and call the villagers, rather than, I don't know, maybe telling Nami and Luffy, like, hey, Kuro is evil. He just killed someone and he attacked Zoro. We got to do something. Or maybe tell Kaya. It's funny that he's worried about Kaya, so the first thing he does is he runs away from the mansion rather than running straight to Kaya to warn her. But whatever. So yeah, we end on the little cliffhanger where Kobe, Garp, and the Marines have shown up. And Zoro is out of commission and his body dumped down the well. Meanwhile, Luffy has drank a giant pot of poisoned soup. And Nami and Kaya are unaware of any of this going down. So yeah, there you go. There's episode 3, Tell No Tales. I liked it. I thought this was really good. I will just say, like, the Netflix series has been just nailing down these episodes. Like, they've been fantastic. The actors and actresses that they get for the roles are spot on. Like, the character they got for Usopp is really good. I think they race changed him because Usopp is in black. Again, whatever. I don't care. Like, you kind of have to take some of this. Like, he's still like, he does a pretty good job of portraying Usopp. He nails down the role of this guy who, like the boy who cried wolf too many times, but also is known for telling all these like grand stories that are completely BS. And just his mannerisms and stuff is total Usopp. So I am happy with this casting because he nailed down the role perfectly. Kuro, I think, once again, another great actor to play the role. I say great actor. I have no idea who the actor is. I've never seen any of his stuff. But for this specific role, he nailed the part. Like, he just plays this, like, smarmy, villainous-looking dude who, like, just looking at him, you can't really trust him. And I just like just the little touches he puts to the character. Like, anytime when he wears glasses, and anytime when he fixes his glasses into place, instead of like using a finger or anything like that, he does this weird thing where he uses like the palm of his hand on the corner of one of his glasses to pull it up. And it's just like nice little touches like that, and just the way he holds himself and stuff. So yeah, the casting was good, and I like the fact that we are finally getting an arc where we're taking multiple episodes to tell it. Because as I was watching this, I was like, okay, we hit the 40-minute mark. If every arc is only one episode, how are they going to wrap all this up in like 20 minutes? There's no way they can do that. And they didn't. Because this arc is going to get at least 2 episodes. So I was like, all right, pacing is actually pretty good here. I can't complain about that. That was one of my nitpicks for the first 2 episodes, was the fact that the pacing sometimes felt a little bit rushed, especially in the second episode. As much as I love the second episode, I did complain about how the pacing was a little bit much, and how like some things we weren't able to just let it simmer and, you know, breathe it in and stuff, because we were just quickly on to the next scene. So I like the fact that this arc at least is going to get 2 episodes, maybe even more. We'll find out. But I like the fact that we're giving it time. We're not just like rushing everything. And because of that, the pacing is way better in this episode than in the previous 2, in my opinion. So yeah, this was awesome. I loved it. Great episode. I will say that this episode is better than the second one overall. Better setup of the characters, the formats, the flashbacks, and the pacing of the flashbacks, and just the pacing of the story overall. A lot better than the previous episode, but I do like the previous episode more, if that makes any sense. So yeah, the third episode is the better episode. The second episode, I just like it more because I like Buggy. And I mean this in a way that, like, for example, Indiana Jones. The Indiana Jones trilogy, to me, there's only a trilogy. There's not 5 movies. There's only 3. My favorite Indiana Jones movie is actually Temple of Doom, which some people consider it to be the weakest one in the trilogy. I would say the best Indiana Jones movie is the third one, The Last Crusades. But Temple of Doom is my personal favorite. Or Tremors, for example. Tremors 2 is my favorite Tremors movie, but Tremors 1 is the better movie. That's kind of how I feel about this, where episode 3 is the better episode. I just personally like episode 2 more. But yeah, I'm just kind of rambling at this point. This was awesome. This has been a huge surprise, because I was as soon as Netflix announced a live action One Piece adaptation, I was like, oh man, I was just completely shitting on it. Not online or anything like that, but just like in my head, I was just like, this is going to be a dumpster fire. This is going to be the next Cowboy Bebop, the next Death Note. This is just going to be a waste of time and money. But no, it's been really good. And I think it's because, like I said, Oda, and also, I don't remember his name. I just saw an article where there was like a Japanese lawyer who was involved in like selling the rights to Netflix and stuff like that. He was like involved, and he basically made sure that he put a stranglehold on the writers, because the writers even came out and said that usually they have a lot more freedom when it comes to stuff like this. When it comes to like adapting things, it's basically the studio will just buy the rights, give it to the writers, and just be like, go nuts, do whatever you want with it. We don't really care, because we're just going to sell it on the name alone. And you can tell when you watch other franchises and they shove in all their political messages and social agendas and just race changing and all this garbage. And it's because they don't care about the property at all. And I'm not saying the writers for this series care, but the Japanese company that sold the rights to the series, they definitely cared. And they basically said, hey, we'll allow you to make this series, but here's what you got to do. And here's what you can't do. And we're going to make sure that you stick by what we want you to do, and that you keep out everything we don't want you to do. And so because of that, we get this. We get a series that the fans absolutely love. We get a series that's getting more views and hits than Stranger Things, than Wednesday. I think it's supposed to be like, this is like the greatest or the most viewed show on Netflix. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I just saw that recently. Everyone absolutely loves it. It's doing bangers. It's doing numbers. It's already got a announcement for season 2. And it's because you're sticking true to the source material. And yeah, it's because the writers are forced to. Obviously, I would assume that they probably want to put in their own stuff in there, but they're not allowed to. And that's the good thing. Because they're not allowed to, we get something that stays faithful to the vision of the original series. And because of that, we get this awesome series that just came out of nowhere. I was not expecting it to be this great. And I mean, it for all I know, it could go down the dumps as I continue on. I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but they've been phenomenal episodes, and I think overall it's probably going to be a great series, assuming everything I read about the Japanese company and the lawyers and Oda being involved in making sure that Netflix can do certain things but not do other things. Assuming all that's true, which I'm guessing it is because that's what it looks like, then yeah, we're going to get a political agenda pushing free series, and I cannot be more than happy for that. So yeah, there you go. I'm just rambling at this point. This was awesome. I loved it. Great episode. Fantastic series so far. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. But there you go. There's episode 3, Tell No Tales. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later.